The stars were silent, but silence did not mean peace. Far away, on the edge of known space, a dying colony sent out a signal. It was not a long message, not a speech, only a broken whisper that repeated again and again. "Help us! Please, help us!" The message traveled through empty space, past abandoned satellites, past forgotten stations, until it reached a relay that still worked. From there, it jumped across systems. Few noticed it, fewer cared. Out here, forgotten worlds were common. Empires rose and fell, and no one stopped to look back. But on Earth, a small group of humans noticed. And that changed everything. The colony was not human. Its people were called the Vayari, thin, silver-skinned beings with wide dark eyes. Once, they had been proud. Once, their fleets had filled the skies. But now, their cities were broken, their ships shattered, their hope almost gone. They were left for dead by the galaxy. No one came when they begged, no one answered when they cried. Until the humans heard. At first, many thought it was a trick. Why should humanity care? Earth had its own problems. Humanity was still young among the stars, still learning, still fragile. They had no empire, no mighty fleets, no ancient power. But the plea kept repeating, and something deep inside humans stirred. Because humanity remembered what it was like to be small, to be weak, to cry out and be ignored. So they decided they would go. Not many ships. Not great war fleets. Just volunteers. Cargo haulers turned into transports. Old warships brought out of storage. Crews who knew they might not come back. But they went anyway, because the voice had asked for help, and that was enough. While the humans prepared, the Vayari colony sank deeper into despair. Their skies were filled with smoke. Ruins burned. The attackers had left, but not before taking everything of value. The survivors were starving, afraid, and broken. They had no reason to expect rescue. They thought their message had vanished into the void. But one night, when the sky was black and heavy, a child pointed upward and whispered, "Lights." The elders looked. At first, they thought it was falling debris. Then they saw the formation, dozens of ships, lined in a pattern too perfect to be random. Engines burned bright, cutting through the darkness. The humans had arrived. The Vayari could not believe it. 4 years, no one had answered them. 4 years, they had been abandoned. Why now? Why these strangers? When the first human ship landed, dust rose in thick clouds. The doors opened, and figures in heavy armor stepped out. Helmets hid their faces, but the way they moved was calm, steady, without fear. The survivors gathered, trembling, unsure if this was salvation or another trap. Then one human removed her helmet. She was young, her face marked by scars, but her eyes were steady and kind. She looked at the Vayari, at their broken city, and said only one thing. "You are not alone anymore." The words struck like thunder. Some wept. Some fell to their knees. Some simply stared, unable to believe that anyone, especially humans, would come for them. But this was only the beginning. The galaxy did not like humanity's choice. Other species watched with cold eyes. To them, the Vayari were a burden, a mistake better erased. Helping them was foolish, dangerous, even insulting to the old powers who ruled the stars. Whispers spread in council chambers and war rooms. Why are the humans interfering? Do they think they can change the order of the galaxy? They will pay for this. But the humans did not care. They built shelters. They shared food. They treated the wounded with rough but determined skill. Day by day, hope returned to the Vayari. Still, shadows moved. Enemy scouts were already on their way back, ready to finish what they started. The Vayari were too weak to resist. Alone, they would fall. But this time, they were not alone. On the edge of the colony, human soldiers watched the horizon. Their ships stood ready. Their weapons hummed. They were fewer, smaller, less advanced than what might come against them. But every one of them was prepared to fight. Because when humanity heard a plea for help, they did not turn away. The night grew darker. A storm gathered. The Vayari huddled in the ruins, listening, waiting. Somewhere above, distant engines stirred, growing louder. The enemies were coming. The humans tightened their grips on their weapons. Their commander gave one last order, quiet but firm. Hold the line. No one takes this world while we stand. And as the first hostile ships entered the sky, the galaxy was about to learn what it meant, when humanity stood beside the forgotten. The sky burned red as the first enemy ships broke through the clouds. Their engines howled, sending fear across the ruined city. The Vayari huddled together, trembling. They had seen these ships before. They knew what came after: the fire, the slaughter, the silence. But this time, something was different. The humans did not run. They did not hide. They stood their ground. Their ships, though smaller and fewer, rose into the sky to meet the threat. Engines flared blue against the night, and the battle began. The first clash was brutal. Enemy fighters swooped down, spitting streams of plasma. Explosions lit up the ruins. But human guns answered. Their weapons were not as advanced, but they were steady, precise, and merciless. One by one, enemy fighters fell. The Vayari watched in shock. No one had ever fought for them before. No one had ever stayed when danger came. Yet here were humans, throwing themselves into fire for strangers. On the ground, human soldiers moved quickly. They set up defenses with old turrets and portable shields. They guided the Vayari into safe zones, even as blasts shook the earth. Every soldier knew the odds were against them. But none showed fear. Above, a massive enemy warship descended. Its hull was black, jagged, like a wound in the sky. Lightning crackled across its surface as it charged weapons that could burn the whole colony to ash. The Vayari fell to their knees, certain it was the end. But the human commander raised her voice through the comms. "All ships on me. We take it down together." They knew it was madness. Their weapons were too weak, their numbers too small. But humans had never cared much for odds. They dove straight into the fire. The battle was chaos. Human ships darted in and out, slamming missiles into the warship's shields. Plasma fire roared back, tearing through the night. 2 human ships were lost in an instant. The crews never screamed, never begged. They went down fighting, giving the others a chance. On the ground, the Vayari children clung to their parents, whispering prayers. Their elders closed their eyes, waiting for death. But then, a flash. One human ship, old and scarred, pushed closer than any dared. Its pilot locked weapons and shouted only 2 words: "For them." The ship struck the warship's weak point and exploded in a storm of light. The massive enemy craft shook, split apart, and fell burning from the sky. The ground rumbled as pieces crashed into the wasteland. For the first time in years, the Vayari looked up and saw their enemy broken. Silence followed. The remaining enemy fighters fled, unwilling to face more of this madness. Humans cheered in their comms, though their victory came at a cost. Many had fallen. Many ships would never fly again. But the line had held. The Vayari could not understand it. Why had these strangers given so much for them? They approached the humans with wide, tear-filled eyes. Their voices shook as they asked, "Why? Why fight for us when no one else would?" The human commander removed her helmet once more. Her armor was scorched, her face streaked with ash, but her voice was steady. "Because you asked. Because no one should be left to die alone." Those words spread like fire among the Vayari. For the first time in generations, hope returned. But far above, across the galaxy, others were watching. Powerful empires, old and cold, took note of this act. To them, humanity had crossed a line. They had defied the natural order, where the weak were forgotten and the strong ruled without mercy. Messages were sent. Fleets were warned. Humanity had chosen a path that would not be forgiven. On Earth, the news spread quickly. The story of the rescue reached billions. Crowds filled the streets, not in fear, but in pride. For the first time, humanity felt it was more than just a young species in the stars. They had shown the galaxy something new. But with pride came danger. The enemies who once ignored Earth would not ignore it now. In the Vayari colony, the survivors began to rebuild with human help. Fires were put out, shelters rose, food was shared. Children laughed again, though softly, as if afraid it might all vanish. And in every shadow, human soldiers stood watch, ready for what was coming. Because everyone knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning. And somewhere, in the deep dark of space, enemy fleets gathered again. Larger this time. Stronger. They would not let their defeat stand. The humans prepared. Their ships were old, their weapons rough, but their spirit burned brighter than any star. They knew the next battle would be harder. They knew more lives would be lost. But when humanity chose to stand, they did not back down. The Vayari elders said it in hushed tones, as if afraid of the truth. The galaxy will never be the same. Not after this. Above them, the stars waited in silence. Soon, they would shake. The colony was quiet after the battle, but it was not the peace of safety. It was the silence before another storm. Smoke still drifted from the ruins. Human soldiers walked among the Vayari, giving food, water, and medicine. Children followed them with wide eyes, whispering in awe. For the first time in years, the Vayari were not alone. Yet deep inside, they feared the price of this gift. Because the enemy would return. Stronger. Angrier. The humans knew it too. Their commander gathered her people in the broken plaza. The stars above still glowed red from burning wreckage. She looked at her soldiers, tired, wounded, but unbroken, and said, "We stood once. We will stand again. Whatever comes, we do not run." Her words carried through the camp. Some of the Vayari heard, and hope stirred in them again. In the following days, the humans worked side by side with the survivors. They built shelters out of ruins. They purified water with machines that looked too small for such miracles. They trained the Vayari to hold weapons, even simple ones, so they could defend themselves. The Vayari elders watched carefully. They had seen many species in the galaxy, but never one like this. Others spoke only of power, control, and trade. But humans spoke of something else. They spoke of promises. Of standing together. Of fighting for strangers, even when there was nothing to gain. One elder, an ancient being with skin like silver glass, whispered to another, "They are either fools, or the beginning of something greater." But the humans were not without doubt. At night, when the fires burned low, they remembered their fallen. They spoke the names of the pilots who had given their lives to break the enemy warship. Some cried quietly. Some stared at the stars, wondering if Earth even knew their sacrifice. Still, they stayed. Far away, in the deep halls of alien empires, the rescue became the center of every discussion. Admirals and lords shouted in anger. The humans had no right, no authority, no place to interfere. To them, the Vayari were already dead, already erased from history. And yet, against all reason, humanity had brought them back. One counselor spat the words like poison. If humanity spreads this madness, if others begin to believe in them, the balance of the galaxy will shatter. So orders were given. Fleets were prepared. Humanity would be tested. Back on the colony, the humans received fragments of intercepted signals. The enemy was gathering. More ships. Heavier weapons. Enough to crush both the humans and the Vayari together. The commander called a meeting with the Vayari elders. The humans stood in the ruins of what was once a great hall. The roof was broken, the walls scarred, but for the first time in years, it was filled with voices again. "We cannot promise victory," the commander said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes showed the weight she carried. "The enemy will come with everything they have. But if we run, they will return later. If we fight, at least we give you a chance to live free." The Vayari fell silent. They had lived too long in fear, too long waiting for the end. Finally, one of them stood. His hands shook, but his voice was clear. "We will fight beside you. If humanity stands for us, then we stand for humanity." The words spread quickly through the survivors. For the first time, the Vayari chose not to bow, not to hide, not to wait for death. They chose to fight. Humans trained them, not as soldiers of an empire, but as people defending their home. Children carried supplies. Elders repaired broken weapons. The young learned to fire rifles, their hands trembling but their eyes burning with new strength. And slowly, a bond grew. Vayari and humans ate together, worked together, bled together. They shared stories, of Earth's long struggles, of Vayari's lost golden age. Each realized the other was not so different. Both had known pain. Both had known what it was to be ignored by the powerful. But now, together they were something more. At night, under the broken sky, human soldiers and Vayari survivors sat by the same fire. One human told the children, with a small smile, "The galaxy thinks you are finished. Let's show them they are wrong." The children laughed for the first time in years. Yet beyond the stars, the enemy fleet was already moving. Hundreds of ships, vast and merciless, darkened the void as they prepared to descend. The humans did not know if their message to Earth had reached in time. Reinforcements, if they came, were still far away. They would have to hold, with or without help. The commander looked at the horizon one last time. She knew the storm was almost here. But she also knew something greater had been born in this broken place. The galaxy wanted the Vayari erased. Humanity had refused. And in that choice, the seeds of a new future had been planted. When the scouts reported the first enemy signals on the edge of the system, the commander only gave one order: prepare. The real war begins now. The warning came at dawn. Human scouts rushed into camp, their faces pale beneath their helmets. The enemy fleet had entered the system. The news spread quickly. Fear rippled through the Vayari survivors, but beside them, the humans moved with calm purpose. Soldiers checked weapons. Engineers repaired shields. Pilots climbed into cockpits. No one wasted a word. They all knew what was coming. Above the colony, the sky turned dark. Hundreds of ships poured from the void, blotting out the stars. Their hulls were sharp, black, and cruel, glowing with the cold light of death. The Vayari had seen this sight before. It always ended the same way: fire, screams, silence. But this time, something was different. The humans stood at the front. The commander's voice came over every channel, steady and unshaken. "Today we do not fight for victory. We fight so they can live. We fight so the galaxy will know humanity does not abandon the forgotten." Her words lit a fire in every heart. The enemy opened the attack. Swarms of fighters screamed down through the clouds. The humans answered with anti-air guns, plasma bursts tearing across the sky. The colony shook under the storm. Human ships rose like sparks against the night, diving into the swarm. They were outnumbered 10-1, but they fought like wolves among giants. Every kill bought another moment for the colony below. On the ground, the first wave landed. Dark armored soldiers poured out, weapons blazing. The Vayari flinched, their memories of slaughter burning fresh. But this time, humans were waiting. From behind barricades, human rifles roared. Explosions lit the ruins as men and women stood shoulder to shoulder, holding the line. The Vayari joined them, unsteady at first, then stronger. Their shots were clumsy, but their hearts were fierce. Side by side, human and Vayari fought together. A young Vayari warrior covered a human who had fallen. A human medic dragged a wounded Vayari child to safety. In the chaos of fire and blood, something new was forged, not allies, but family. Above, the battle worsened. Enemy cruisers descended, their guns pounding the earth. Human ships fell burning, their crews fighting to the last second. Still, the humans refused to retreat. Then the great enemy flagship appeared. Vast, black, and terrible, It filled the sky like a second moon. Its weapon charged, glowing with enough power to burn the entire colony to ash. The Vayari cried out in despair. But one human ship, scarred and smoking, broke formation. Its pilot's voice came across the comms, steady but calm. For Earth. For the Vayari. For humanity. The ship launched forward at full speed. Enemy fire ripped through its hull, but it did not stop. At the last moment, it rammed into the flagship's weapon core. A blinding explosion split the heavens. The flagship reeled, its weapon shattered, its shields broken. Cheers erupted across human comms. For one breath, hope surged. But the enemy was not finished. More ships pressed in. More soldiers dropped to the ground. The humans and Vayari were pushed back, street by street, barricade by barricade. The commander stood at the front, her armor scorched, her rifle glowing hot. She refused to fall. "Hold!" she shouted. "If we stand, they cannot break us." And they did hold. Hours passed. The colony became a battlefield of fire and ruin. Human soldiers fought until their last bullet, then with their bare hands. Vayari warriors who once trembled now stood tall, blades flashing beside their new brothers and sisters. Every second was bought with blood. But every second mattered. Because far beyond the system, Earth had heard their call. And help was coming. As the humans and Vayari fought against impossible odds, sensors picked up new signals. Dozens of fresh contacts entered the system. Engines burned white-hot, flying straight into the storm. The first human reinforcements had arrived. The battlefield froze for a heartbeat. The enemy turned their ships to face this new threat. The weary defenders lifted their heads. And across the comms, a new voice spoke with iron resolve. "This is Earth Fleet Command. Hold the line, we fight with you." The galaxy had wanted humanity to remain small, silent, and weak. But now, for the first time, Earth itself had entered the war. The stars shook. The sky blazed with fire. From the darkness of space, the first human reinforcements stormed into battle. Their ships were newer, larger, stronger than the small volunteer fleet that had first answered the plea. Hulls gleamed silver and gray, their engines burning white as they cut through the enemy. For the exhausted defenders on the ground, it was like watching dawn break after endless night. Vayari and human soldiers looked upward, their hearts pounding. Help had come. The enemy fleet turned to meet the new arrivals, but Earth ships came with fury. Heavy cruisers unleashed torrents of missiles. Carriers released waves of fighters that screamed into the swarm. Where the first battle had been survival, now it became something else: resistance. On the colony, the commander stood with her troops in the ruins. Smoke curled into the sky, wounded lay in rows, but her voice was steady. "They came for us," she said softly, almost to herself. "Now we show them what we can do together." The fighting raged in orbit. Enemy warships pressed forward with overwhelming numbers, but Earth's fleet fought with a fire no one had expected. They were not the oldest empire, not the strongest, but every ship fought as if it carried the weight of the world. And in truth, it did. Human captains shouted orders with voices raw from hours of battle. Pilots dove into fire with reckless courage, saving their wingmen at the cost of their own lives. When ships were crippled, crews refused to abandon them, keeping guns firing until the very end. The enemy began to falter. For the first time in years, they felt something they did not expect: fear. On the ground, the humans and Vayari launched their counterattack. With reinforcements landing, they surged forward, retaking streets once drowned in blood. Vayari who had once been broken now fought with fire in their eyes. Their voices rose in battle cries that echoed through the ruins. For humanity. For freedom. The bond between the two peoples grew in every clash. A human soldier threw himself in front of a Vayari child to shield her from fire. Moments later, that same child's older brother dragged the soldier to safety, refusing to let him fall. Together, they turned despair into strength. At last, the great enemy flagship, crippled but not destroyed, tried to flee the system. Its engines burned, carrying it back into the void. But the humans were not about to let it escape. A formation of Earth's newest warships gave chase. Missiles streaked across the dark, tearing through shields. The flagship staggered, broken, its armor shattering under the storm. With one final strike, its core exploded in a blinding flash. The shockwave rippled across the stars. The battle was over. Silence fell on the colony. Slowly, cheers began to rise. Human soldiers lifted their weapons in triumph. Vayari survivors wept openly, clinging to one another. The enemy had been beaten back. For the first time in generations, the Vayari had survived a storm instead of being erased by it. But the cost was heavy. The ground was littered with the fallen, human and Vayari alike. Fires still burned. Wounds still bled. The commander walked among the survivors, her armor cracked, her face pale with exhaustion. Yet her eyes were hard as steel. "We held," she said. Her voice carried through the ruined plaza. "We bled. We lost. But we stood. And because we stood, they live." The Vayari elders stepped forward. With trembling hands, they bowed, not in weakness, but in honor. "No one has ever fought for us," one said. "No one has ever paid such a price for our lives. From this day forward, we stand with humanity." Word of the battle spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The story of how humans had come for the abandoned, how they had fought and bled for strangers, could not be silenced. Some laughed, calling humanity reckless. Some raged, calling them dangerous. But many listened. Many wondered. For the first time, whispers spread in the halls of power. Perhaps the humans are more than they seem. On Earth, crowds filled the streets, listening to every broadcast, every message from the front. They heard of sacrifice. They heard of courage. They heard of a new bond forged in fire. And in every city, every home, pride burned bright. Humanity had stepped into the galaxy not as servants, not as silent observers, but as protectors. And the galaxy would never forget it. Yet in the shadows, the enemy was not finished. Defeat only fed their hatred. Across the stars, they rebuilt, whispering of vengeance. The humans had embarrassed them, broken their order, and inspired others to believe in hope. That could not be allowed. The war was far from over. It was only beginning. As the survivors of the colony buried their dead, as the humans and Vayari stood side by side in mourning and in pride, the commander looked once more at the sky. She knew more battles were coming. Stronger foes. Greater sacrifices. But she also knew one truth that the galaxy could no longer deny. Humanity had risen. And they would not stand alone. The galaxy did not sleep after the battle of the Vayari colony. News spread faster than light. From hidden traders to ancient empires, everyone heard the same story. Humanity had stood against a fleet that should have crushed them. They had saved a people left for dead. And they had won. Some refused to believe it. They called the story lies, tricks, human propaganda. But the wreckage of enemy ships drifting in space told another truth. In council chambers across the stars, arguments raged. Admirals pounded fists against tables. Politicians shouted until their voices broke. The galaxy had rules, unspoken, but clear. The strong ruled, the weak suffered, and no one interfered. It had been this way for thousands of years. But humanity had broken that rule. In the grand halls of the ZYRR Dominion, their leader hissed with rage. His people had sent the fleets that attacked the Vayari. Now those fleets were ashes. His advisors trembled as he spat his command. Crush the humans. Burn their worlds. Make them beg for mercy they will never receive. Far away, in the Alari Concord, voices were softer but no less fearful. The Alari were old, wise, and cautious. They did not fight wars anymore, but they understood danger. And humanity smelled like danger. They inspire hope in the broken, one counselor whispered. If others rise beside them, the galaxy will change. In the Quran Empire, warlords argued. Some wanted to destroy Earth before it grew stronger. Others wanted to ally with the humans, to use their reckless courage for their own gains. For the first time in centuries, the warlords could not agree. And in the shadows of smaller worlds, something new stirred. Species long oppressed, beaten down, and forgotten heard the story of the Veari. They whispered it in secret caves, in ruined cities, in broken colonies. The humans came for them. Maybe they will come for us too. Hope, long buried, began to rise again. On Earth, leaders struggled to understand the storm they had unleashed. The battle had united their people in pride, but it had also painted a target on every human world. Military factories roared to life. New fleets were ordered. Soldiers trained day and night. Humanity was preparing for war, though none knew how vast it would become. The Veari, once broken, began to rebuild under human protection. Their children played again, their elders sang again. But scars remained. They knew the enemy would return. And they knew they were now bound to humanity's fate, for better or worse. In orbit above their recovering colony, the human commander stood at the window of her ship. She watched the stars with hard eyes. Behind her, a Veari elder spoke softly. "You do not understand what you have done," the elder said. "The galaxy will not forgive you. You have shown them that mercy is possible. And mercy is the one thing they fear." The commander did not turn. Her voice was quiet, steady. "Then let them fear." Far away, in hidden space, the enemy gathered. The Dominion forged new fleets, larger than before. Weapons that had been locked away for centuries were brought out. Vengeance burned in every plan, every word. But they were not the only ones preparing. Across neutral systems, ships began to drift toward Earth. Smugglers, outcasts, refugees. Small groups who wanted to see for themselves if the stories were true. They came with broken vessels, with nothing to trade but trust. And humanity, to the surprise of many, welcomed them. For every ally humanity gained, another enemy sharpened their blades. The galaxy was changing. Lines were being drawn. Some believed humanity would be destroyed quickly, crushed under the weight of older powers. Others feared the opposite, that this small, stubborn species might truly become the spark of something greater. In one secret council, a voice spoke above the noise. "We tried to erase the Veari. The humans made them stand again. If humanity survives, the galaxy as we know it will not." No one disagreed. Back on the colony, as night fell, humans and Veari sat together around firelight. The stars above glittered, cold and silent. Children laughed. Soldiers cleaned weapons. Survivors whispered of the future. They did not know what was coming. They only knew one truth. They had stood together once, and they would do it again. And somewhere, in the deep void, the storm prepared to break. The storm finally came. From the depths of space, the Dominion unleashed its greatest armada. Thousands of ships filled the void, a sea of black metal stretching farther than eyes could see. Weapons glowed with the light of annihilation. It was a force meant not to conquer, but to erase. And at the edge of the Veari system, humanity waited. Their fleet was smaller, weaker, but it stood in tight formation. Beside them hovered Veari ships, rebuilt and reforged. Behind them came vessels of strange design, outcasts, smugglers, even refugees who had chosen to fight. One by one, they had come, answering a call that no one had spoken aloud but all had heard, humanity's call to stand. The commander stood on the bridge of her flagship, staring at the endless wall of enemy ships. Fear pressed heavy on every heart. No one could deny the truth. This might be the end. But humanity had never cared much for odds. She spoke across the fleet, her voice steady and fierce. "They believe we will kneel. They believe we will break. But today, we show them the truth. Humanity does not kneel. Humanity does not abandon. Today, we fight not just for Earth, not just for the Veari, but for every world that was ever left to die." A roar answered her words, human voices, Veari voices, the voices of countless peoples who had chosen to stand together. Then the armada fell upon them. The battle was like no other. Space burned with fire and light. Human cruisers darted between massive enemy battleships, striking with precision before vanishing into the storm. Vayari frigates, once thought dead forever, fought like wolves at their side. Ships of every kind, ragged but fierce, threw themselves into the fray. On the colony below, the ground shook as enemy troops landed in waves. Human and Vayari soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, their lines thin but unbroken. Barricades turned into fortresses, every street a battlefield. The Dominion thought fear would scatter them. Instead, defiance bound them. For every human ship destroyed, 3 enemy ships burned. For every soldier who fell, another rose in their place. The galaxy had never seen such fury, such unity. Yet the Dominion's numbers were endless. Slowly, painfully, the defenders were pushed back. The commander's ship groaned under fire. Hulls shattered. Flames spread. At last, the Dominion's flagship entered the battle, a leviathan of black steel, larger than a city, armed with weapons that could rip planets apart. Its shadow swallowed the stars. The defenders faltered. Could even courage stand against such power? Then, from the colony, a signal rose. A child's voice, broken but strong, broadcast across every channel. You are not alone. Humanity stands. The Vayari stand. We all stand. The words struck like lightning. Across the fleet, hearts reignited. Across the battlefield, voices roared in unison. And humanity, reckless and unyielding, did the unthinkable. Every remaining ship turned and charged the flagship. Missiles streaked. Plasma burned. Hulls tore apart in fire. Crews went silent one by one, but they did not stop. The commander's ship, broken and burning, made the final run. Her voice carried one last time. Tell the galaxy, we stood together. Her vessel rammed into the Dominion flagship's core. The explosion tore through the giant like a sun being born. Light consumed the sky, and when it faded, the flagship was gone. The armada faltered. Leaderless, shaken, it began to break. Some fled. Some fought to the last. But the tide had turned. Humanity and its allies surged forward, driving the enemy into retreat. The battle was won. Silence fell again, not of death, but of awe. Across the ruins, across the fleet, survivors looked at one another with tears, with pride, with disbelief. Against the impossible, they had stood. The galaxy changed that day. No longer could the strong say the weak would always fall. No longer could empires claim mercy was weakness. Humanity had shown another path, the path of standing together, no matter the cost. The Vayari, once broken, now stood tall beside humanity. Other peoples, long forgotten, began to rise. And in every dark corner of the galaxy, whispers turned to promises. If the humans will stand, then so will we. Earth mourned its dead, but it also lifted its head high. Humanity had paid the price of blood, but in doing so, they had lit a fire that would never go out. And though the war was not truly over, though enemies still plotted in the shadows, the galaxy would never again look at humanity as small, or weak, or silent. They had stood beside the forgotten. They had fought for those abandoned. And the stars themselves had shaken.